Thanks for joining. Today, I want to talk with you about effective teamwork and a clear communication within a team to provide and make sure of accessibility in projects, so that when you are creating a project, it turns out to be as accessible as possible. And I think that most of the problems are regarding of bad teamwork, of bad collaboration, also of bad not maybe bad, but that you maybe not know what you should be able to do in your role. This does not necessarily have to do something with what you have learned or what you have you learned at the university, or when you're self-taught developer or designer or something. This is just how you started out, and I as well thought that when I start working at a company or I'm joining a team, then I will learn all the other stuff I'm currently missing. But I also realized that this is, at least in my case and the different project I was working, so the different team members from so many different companies, it was actually not the case. People tend to work separately, so like doing only their own stuff, even though if we are both front-end developers, and I assume we are kind of working together because we have the same code base, we work on the same projects, so we help each other out when you ask questions that the other person tries to help, or also not only in the same role but also for the other roles in case there's a new designer, not only new to the project but also new to designing in general. And because of other projects or something, or because of my experience, I would know certain stuff that I would share this knowledge. But I also experience that this mostly does not happen. People keep their knowledge to themselves for many reasons. I also heard from other developers, like, it does not make sense at all to share some knowledge, to try to change things or stuff, because it always was like this and it will never change. I'm still that naive to believe that we can change things within a team, and that's why I want to share with you my experience or what I expect from different roles. And at least we do our best, the best thing we can do in our role, and we as human or we as individuals, and trying to make the whole team become better. And when we are lucky, it will work. When not, then not. But I also assume that we will not be happy in working within this team or the project in the long term. So at least I would say, let's start to become the developers or designers or testers who we really want to be, good ones, actually. Just good developers, just good testers and designers. Before I start with the whole webinar for today, I want to do some housekeeping as well. You can ask questions throughout the webinar in the chat in English or German. I will answer them directly during the webinar, or also in the end, or if you do not want to ask a question, others can see as well. You can also do it in the Q&A section, and I can answer them anonymously. So feel free to use both of it. Additionally, for the webinar, I always hope that you are already watched all the other webinars, because if you're new to accessibility, I tried to make all the webinar series. So I tried to make the webinar series from beginner to intermediate to advanced. So it's really helpful that you would start out. So there's a playlist with the accessibility webinar series containing all the webinars I did until now, really starting with what is accessibility until over automatic testing tools, manual testing, the Accessibility European Act, in general, what is the WCAG, the guidelines, of accessibility guidelines and success criteria, how does it work, and today what we could or should expect from different roles in a development team. This will all be stored on my YouTube channel here under the webinar series. So for my YouTube channel, if you do not have it, I will post it here as well. And for the slides, and also where you can find the YouTube video, is directly on Accessibility First, my blog, website under the webinar series URL. Scroll down, find all the existing at all the previous webinars with the where you register for the event, the slides, the recording, and if there's a transcript, then you can also find the transcript. So the next one would be for this one. Here is the link to the webinar series. In case you do not have it, you can also get the slides and the YouTube video directly on the event page. So for today, there is nothing here yet, but when I update in a few days, you can see the slides and the recordings. It will look. I'm sorry. Yeah, it would have been the correct one. It you can find it in each of the events. In the previous events, you can see it directly how it's worked, like the past events. These are the past events. You will also find the event today in down there. When you scroll down from the event page where you registered, click on the event, and then you will find, scrolling down, the video as well as the slides. So this would be our event page where you had to register. And I also share my drive. You will find all the slides and the transcripts inside of the Google Drive. Everyone should have access to it. I think it should be open. If you don't have access, please text me. I will give you access. And I also want to share for all the women, especially here in Vienna or in Austria, something very cool, because for the Women Techmakers, the other community I'm involved with or I'm handling currently on my own, we find our first sponsor, and this means we can have in-person events starting with October, my first in-person event for women, how women get into tech. And everyone, of course, is welcome to join. Please keep your eye on the website, because I will soon share, first of all, who is our partner and also when is the first event starting. So, yep, stay tuned for this one. Because I want to make the Women Techmakers really be a thing again. And yeah, other than that, we can resume or start with our webinar today. So the agenda is, I will talk about the development lifecycle for a bit and how it works and how, in my opinion, it should work. And then I will go a little bit into detail for the different roles. So there are only 4 roles I want to discuss today, but of course in a big, in a development team, there are a maximum of about 9 people normally for the, when you do it like Scrum. So a few developers like front-end, back-end, product owner, project management, testers, DevOps, engineering, different roles. But I want to discuss the most known ones, or which are most likely here in our webinar, which would be the project manager, the UX designer, a web developer, or a QA tester. Yeah, so the question we always have is, who is responsible for accessibility? And currently, how it is answered, or how it looks like, is that accessibility is somewhere not within the development lifecycle, which is, in my opinion, very weird, because this is just a standard. Q&A tester, nice Gregor. QA, yeah, QA. Sorry. And it should not be something different. So for me, it's always weird when someone calls me like an accessibility engineer or developer, because I'm just a front-end developer, and accessibility should be something basic in my role description and not something additional. Also as a designer, so we should not achieve or aim for becoming an accessibility designer or an accessibility tester, because a tester should already test for accessibility, like they test for responsiveness or different devices. Yeah, and so the development phase would be the planning. Like, this is when the product owner and project manager, business analyst, or whoever is involved start planning the whole product, and maybe the analysis, like the business analysis but the main would be the planning, and then it goes over to the designing phase. So the UX designer starts designing using Figma or other tools, but I use Figma, so I will always refer to Figma, but you can of course use Adobe or what else is there out. Great English. So the design phase, then the implementation phase, which is the developer. So start coding, front-end developer, back-end developer, the whole DevOps and security stuff is within this life cycle, and then of course the testing. And when everything works, then it's going to be goes into staging phase and production phase and comes to life at some point. And if there is a bug, then we start with the planning and analyzing and designing again. Yeah, this would be like a typical development life cycle. I think we all know about. And yeah, like I said, currently accessibility is something considered as something additional. So where does it fit? Of course, it never fits into planning for some reason. It mostly fits at the end, and now we don't have time for it anymore. So we simply do not do it because we don't have time, and time costs money. And you know the drill. This is always a weird situation, which could be, it should not come to that, because we could simply start with the planning phase and keeping accessibility the whole time within. It should be something very basic, the ground of all the different phases. Yeah, so the goal would be that accessibility is something basic, as I said, and we are not thinking of it as something additionally, but ground legend. And I mean, it's our job, no matter what role you are in, you want always to get the best user experience. So for a project manager, you first of all, you want to get the best team. So you should already consider at least one person of the team who understands accessibility. This would be great. And if you are a designer, you do not design for the standard. What is a standard user? The standard user you think is like you, most likely a good vision and a mouse user, and this is for whom you are designing. And you're happy with it, and this should not be the case. So you already have to think about so many different users and keep everyone in mind while designing, to make sure accessibility is already baked in from the very beginning. And you should also, in my opinion, understand your role correctly, because if you are a user experience designer, every user can be so different. You cannot simply design for one specific user. Then you do not understand your role, in my opinion. And you have the tools. You should know your tools and do the best with these tools, like in Figma, add annotations. We will get to it later on when I'm talking about the designers. You have to make use of everything Figma has to offer, because that's why it has this feature to offer, to make use of it. And you as a designer should be able to know about it and to understand how to work with it. And for me, in my opinion, this is simply your role description. And nothing special about, nothing you would say to a boss, yeah, if you want me to use annotations or to get better at this one, then please pay me more, because for me, it's like standard. You should already know this stuff. For developers, this would be understanding semantic HTML. So, I mean, HTML is the language, if it's a language or a markup, call it what you like. But this is a basic tool you should understand when becoming a front-end developer. This is your tool. Like a front-end developer is using semantic HTML, and this consists of many, many different HTML elements, more than 100, and not only divs and spans. And maybe a button, or a link, which is wrongly used, and stuff like this. As a developer, understand semantic HTML and the DOM. And most of them think that's okay or cool, or it doesn't matter, or whatever weird thought they have when not using semantic HTML, or when not understanding HTML and are saying, yeah, I'm using JavaScript, so I do not need all this HTML stuff. This is not a language after all. And I think this is a weird thing to say, actually. I mean, it's a job. I don't know. Maybe I love my job that much and I want to be simply good at what I'm doing. And they do not feel this way. And so that's for them, that's okay. But I personally think it's weird saying stuff like this. Yeah, so often refer to them or say to them that, yeah, actually you should consider yourself lucky that your boss or the ones who are hiring you do not understand what the developer could be capable of and paying you a lot of money for only using divs and not understanding the rest of semantic HTML. Just saying, because the developer themselves, they know what they could do. Yeah. And yeah, I'm also, I guess, naive about all these things, trying to do your best in your job. Yeah, but this is just how it is for me, that I'm always believing that if I would be a CEO, I would only hire really good developers understanding HTML and accessibility, and not the one who are capable of doing the weirdest functionality with divs, but who do not understand or are willing to learn what is created for them, like the tools. I think willingness is the key here. But yeah, let's keep it simple for now, as I said, with the rules, only discussing these four, and let's look at something, how I would say if you would design a homepage for, let's say, the accessibility first landing page, how I would suggest or think it would be a good idea to divide the knowledge or who is involved within which state, to make sure accessibility is always baked in, and in the future, hopefully in the near future, but somewhere in the future, this is simply normal. But currently, when we are trying to bake accessibility into it, I think it's quite good to use a RACI chart to make it more clear. So a RACI chart is, I think, something project managers are using. But you decide, there are different tasks, like here, you have the design a homepage, create a mockup. For example, these are just examples for tasks. Design image assets, write the content for the whole page, code the homepage, and also test the homepage. And for these few steps, we have our also added the content writer, if you have one. But each of these roles have some sort of doing within these phases. So someone is responsible, which means they complete I can't even spell it, deliverables or the tasks. Someone is accountable. So the accountable part should always be one person who gets the blame if something is not working, or at least you can go to them when something is not working, because this is the one person who is accountable for this. Also, some people, this can be many people on the team, who should be consulted, and then a few who are informed about certain changes. Informed is like reading about new features maybe once a week, so at least a DevOps engineer knows that there is something new the front-end developer had to implement, a new feature or something, but they do not really care, because as a DevOps engineer, they work somewhere completely different. And for the landing page, one suggestion from my side would be, of course, I assume that really accountable, like the product owner, who is the one who wants this product, and someone who to talk to, and also someone to blame, is most likely the project manager. This is already a poor role, I think, being a project manager. So from every perspective, I guess, from the product owner and also for all the other roles, I guess he is accountable for almost everything, and responsible for doing it, like designing the homepage, creating the mockup, or design image assets, would be responsible, the responsibility for the UX designer. And I think even though they are responsible, I would already include the web developer and also the QA tester, not Q&A, but QA tester. Because when you have a designer, let's say a designer who is new, not only to the project, but in general, they often do not know certain things. And this is totally fine. And also the reason why you should already involve web developers and QA testers. Everyone has different experiences, and you can already, as a developer, share that when the designer designs a certain feature or an interactive element, most likely it's about interactive elements and widgets and stuff like this because they're more complicated, then the web developer could already say, how are you imagine this should work? Because sometimes things cannot be coded as simple as it seems for the designer or for the project manager. So this will be already the first time you can say, we should stop here, or we should think about something different. Because when the design is already finished, and this is only, I think I mentioned in the beginning, what I experienced. So like until now, I have rarely worked with really good developers or designers or testers. Maybe I'm just unlucky, or maybe this is how it is, which I really do not hope. But we could prevent so many bug tickets, and which costs so much time. And already, if like I or other developers would have been involved very early in the designing phase, or even when the product owner tells us what they want to have in their application. And also for the QA testers, when there's a QA tester working like 12 years in QA testing, then they have seen so many different things. So they know stuff and can already know share their experience that I saw this on a different app. This had not have there were different problems there, so we should think about something else to implement or make it design it differently. Like the sharing the knowledge we have. We all have something to share, I think, because we all use different websites, and there are so many interactive elements. Some know and some of us do not know, because maybe I'm always using the same 3 applications and others have their whole phone full with hundreds of applications and know every one of them. And there are so many different things they already have seen, which were good or bad, so they can share all these experiences. And once again, and I'm repeating myself very often today, I'm not sorry for this, just to make it clear and that it's really second in mind. Sharing your knowledge is very crucial, and not believing that this is a designer, they already know everything. So no one knows everything. It's not possible. That's why we are a team, aren't we? There should not be a designer and now it's a cut and my design now goes to the developer and they do the development stuff, not asking any questions, but assuming the designer may want it like this or that, and then I ship it to the testing phase, and then they test, and also then there's the bug ticket where it says it does not work, and it's like, okay, good to know that it does not work. What exactly? Like the communication thing should change a lot within a team. Then writing content would be the responsibility here for the content writer. It would also be great having already the UX designer involved, and depending on their skills, maybe when they are new, then also I would assume the web developer QA tester also be more involved, like a consultant, for reasons like a content writer wants to add abbreviations, and they think of abbreviations as abbreviations and do not think any further. And then someone like more experienced with accessibility already know that, okay, when you add an abbreviation, then we have to at least show the full term at least once. But maybe the designer thinks, I know that there is an HTML element where you can do the abbreviation and you don't have to, because then you can hover and then there's the full term when you're hovering. And this is the only thing they are currently knowing at this stage. But I, as a developer, know, this is right and it works on most of the browsers, but only because you can hover, you cannot access it with your keyboard, and this is what I know. And the QA tester is even more experienced, and they say, okay, you have implemented it with keyboard, but it's still not screen reader accessible. So we also have to think about for screen readers. And there are so many different stages where you can think about different things. That's why I suggest keep everyone involved already in the design phase for all these different elements. For the coding homepage, I code something, the QA tester or maybe already knows certain elements which often failed in previous projects, so they can already be consulted and telling me as a developer, hey, there was one developer I know about and they implemented like this with the code, so try to do it. Try to use maybe this HTML element because you know the project and I know you are not that experienced, and this can always just help when we in the beginning define almost everything, like all the HTML elements we should use or we should use with caution, or which take more thinking how we could implement it. Yeah, this would be it. Let's stop it here for the RACI chart. I think you get what I want to tell you. So the project manager. For the project manager, with or without expertise, currently we have this project manager with accessibility somewhere else, but not in their mind already. It would make sense when gathering a team for a project to evaluate what each team member knows about accessibility. Also, what resources about accessibility can be shared, and people get the time to understand their part for communication and for implementing accessibility. So gathering a good team for a project is very crucial, and you should have at least one person really understanding accessibility. I would say that even if you're a designer or a tester or a developer, it doesn't matter, because you always know a bit from the other roles as well. Or at least for me as a developer, I have the feeling that I understand many things from the accessibility testing perspective and also for the designing perspective. Maybe it's just because a developer often also have to do some testing before they ship something, or also design a bit for the web already, and this role is maybe a bit more fluent like the other two roles. But I, in my opinion, think if you're really curious about the web, and that's why you are a QA tester for web applications or for mobile applications, and you are a UX designer for web and mobile, you are in general interested in the web, how it works, and not only designing using Figma. This would be my understanding of a UX designer for web applications, actually. Maybe this is not the case or not often the case, but I assume these two roles also are very much involved into how the web works. This does not mean that a designer knows how to use a screen reader, but to understand that there is a screen reader and a few common things how to use a screen reader, or how these people work with a screen reader, especially if you're this is a user. You create user experiences, so you should understand the user. Sure, isn't it the case? And also for testing, if you think something is failing, then I think you have the understanding of how should it be designed differently to not fail in the beginning. The roles, in my opinion, should be, or actually are, fluid, and people should start to act like it. Yeah. Yeah. So for the product manager, they communicate with the product owner and they plan the sprints and they create epics and such, but they're missing out on accessibility. So this is the current state. And the funny thing is that they always say, yeah, we don't have time for accessibility, or yeah, time is money and stuff like this, and we bake it at the end of the testing phase when there is a bug. And And I have never been in a project where we completed it on time, and there's also a study. So the study says that only 26% of all IT projects are completed on time, and 28% are halted, and 46 exceed the plan costs, fail to meet the go live date, or never achieve the required functional scope. So when you tell me that we don't have time for accessibility, I mean, come on. Why do we feel that much already? And there's not these numbers are not concerning accessibility at all. These were already before accessibility was a thing. Unfortunately, it has to be a thing. But we are failing for years, and now you want to tell me that accessibility would, make the numbers even worse? I actually would say that the numbers would be better. This is just my opinion, but I'm so sure of it. I'm so sure of it, or I'm so naive, because accessibility is so much more. You guarantee with accessibility, as I mentioned in the design process already, that the structure is fully understandable by the developer, and um, and therefore I can code already with a better understanding when we all discuss in the beginning which elements we are using and with which elements we could have troubles. We could already work on fixes, even though there's not a bug there in that time, but yeah, to prevent it for even happening. And you also enhance other things, like for me as a developer, what code bases I'm coming in projects is really, I want to cry. There's no code quality at all. There are comments, there are elements which are not even used anymore. People do not understand the code base. It's bad for developer experience, and then people start to say, okay, I don't care anymore, because other people do also not care. And then there is this thing of creating careless thing, and we ship the bug fix again and again and again, because now it's worked this, but then you have destroyed something differently. And if we would care about code quality and semantic HTML and all this stuff, which has most likely accessibility already built in, I'm sure the numbers would be higher, that we complete in time, or that at least we complete the project. But yeah, I'm trying to motivate teams when I'm getting into a new team, to work towards accessibility, to have implemented other stuff like a good developer experience, which would also be a user experience and such. I would say, sure, it's worth it to have accessibility baked in immediately, to make the numbers better. And also maybe in the beginning give the developers, or the different developer members, more time to learn about accessibility. Even so, it seems to cost much time in the beginning. It's getting better over time, because you do much research maybe in the first 2 months, but after a while you are used to how you implement certain elements the accessible way, and then it does not cost time anymore. And I guess in the long run even reduces the time, which also would reduce, or you're not over time, or you're still in scope for time and cost in the long run, despite instead of spending more time and money at the end because of bug fixing. Yeah, and I would say in the projects I was working in, and we of course did also not meet the deadline or the go live date. It was because of bad code quality, and also very bad communication. I was once the only front-end developer, and the project manager, and I told the project manager certain elements cannot be implemented. It had to be accessible, and certain elements cannot be implemented because it was designed to have an interactive element inside an interactive element, and this is not possible. Like browser, or it's technically not possible. You can do it, and on some browser it will work, but it's just wrong. It's wrong on the HTML perspective. And Now you have to call the project manager, and then they have to call the product owner, telling them this does not work, we have to redesign it, and then they discuss something, and then the product owner has different questions of maybe we can implement it like this or that, and the questions but only go to the product manager, and then the product manager will come to me again, and then 3 days are gone with no solution. And I thought, why do I not communicate with the product owner myself? Tell him immediately what's possible or not. Weird things are going on in projects, in my opinion. Weird things are going on with the project manager role. Maybe it's not their fault, but this is how the role is. But yeah, communication was a main reason why things were failing a lot. Yeah. And the best case would be that accessibility is within their mind when planning, when communicating with the product owner, and advise them already certain things to be accessible, like colors. A product manager could already know the color combination the product owner wants is not accessible. We do not have to give it to the designer, then they implement the 2 colors the product owner wants, and then it comes to maybe the tester. Maybe the tester is the one who knows about accessibility, and they say, okay, the colors have not enough contrast, we have to redesign it. It happens. It happens, and it's sad. These are things a product manager should really already know, that this is certain things are not possible from the very beginning. And when planning the sprint, plan enough time maybe in the beginning for learning about accessibility. And when creating epics, the different tasks, they should already implement accessibility stuff, like as a user I want to click on the button, and then the background is green. It's not only click on the button, meaning with the mouse, but also when navigating to the button with either the mouse or with the keyboard. And with the keyboard, this means it should also work with enter key and with I forgot the long key. What is it called? To make a space bar, yeah. The space bar, stuff like this should already be within an issue, because then the developer has no excuse to not think about how can you implement it in the simplest way that this works. I mean, which would mean using a real button, the semantic HTML element button, and not come up with a div in JavaScript or stuff like this. So many things could already be prevented when the product manager knows lots of stuff about accessibility. So for the UX designer, there are a few more slides, but I would say the information load is still the same. You design the UI, the UX you design for currently. This is so the current state. Accessibility is somewhere else. A design for a user who they believe uses and perceive the web like they do, most likely with a good vision and with a mouse. And they do not really understand how the web works. And its individual elements. So they only know the Figma tool, and often they do not even know how to use Figma well, but they are here, so we have to work with them. And in my opinion, as a UX designer, you have to know certain things. When designing, you should know and also make these annotations, especially when you have developers who are new. Of course, if you have a developer who is very knowledge about accessibility, you do not have to explain what landmarks to me, but you not always work with people who are very experienced. So it would be good if the designs always look like this. You have the homepage, and then you add like the landmark structure. And also, if you are capable of explaining why you are using landmarks, because you can navigate via the landmarks as a screenreader user, for example, and also make it clear for developers that there are specific tags when creating landmarks. That's why it's called landmarks. So there's a meaning behind it, and a developer should then know, okay, I have to use certain elements, or if I do not know the elements, then I start researching it and then to implement it correctly. And add as much as information you know about the header element, the main element, maybe which code you can use, how is it structured, that the header should not be within the main, for example. So, but these, like the header, the main, the navigation, this should be on the same level. I mean, the navigation can be within the header, but like the header and the main and the footer are on the same level in the DOM and not containing another. This is something very important to make it a landmark. And as a designer, you should understand how the page is really structured, not only making the beautiful design, but also what's the meaning behind of it. What's the meaning when you create this element over there, that this is a header and this is an element standing on its own and have also a semantic HTML tag the developer should use. Another knowledge I hope designers know is the heading structure, like the layout of the whole site, that these are headings, these are also maybe different sections. This is a site navigation or a site called as an semantic HTML tag or element, how the hierarchy is when working with the DOM, and also make it clear to the developer how these elements have to be implemented so the DOM structure is correct. Because when I could understand it as a developer, okay, they want me to do this section. And I would read it, maybe because I'm not that experienced, I would read it that this one is the next element, and I do it like a float on the right side. But this could be a problem if you maybe not start with an H2. Then the heading structure would be destroyed. And also, as a screen reader, this would be the second thing you are listening to, the second section, but this was not the designer's, the way the designer was thinking, because they wanted the structure to be navigating first to the main heading and then the top accessibility specialist, and after that read the different articles. And this is just some side knowledge you are sharing on the website, or side information sharing on the website. So it's important that the developer understands in the code it should be first appear this one, and then this element, and then that element, and the last element should be this one. And this has to be communicated, because you as a designer cannot be sure that a developer sees it and already knows how to implement it. Also know about different navigations. This would also be something for the content writer, but if you do not have a content writer, then it's most likely the concern of a UX designer. If you have different navigations, then they should also have a name. And you should note it down, that this is the main navigation, for example. This is the navigation for a local specialist. This is the navigations for the quick links. This is the navigation for upcoming events. And this should have different names, which the developer then implements. So for screen reader users or for the testers to know, I can navigate through the different navigations with their specific name, their accessible name. And I assume a designer already knows this stuff. This would be the best case scenario and what we should aim for. And when there are more complex components, even better. That these are links, these should not be buttons. Also give maybe some tips. You have experienced that many developers have, I don't know for what reason, but difficulties understanding the differences between a link and the button, and you know about it, please simply write it down for the developer. In case there's a developer who does not understand the differences as well, now they know that, okay, there's a difference and I have to implement a button because there's a functionality changing something on the website, and I have to use a link when it's navigating somewhere within the website or to an external location. Already in the design phase, you should add as much as information as possible. Alone, because you know it, or together with at least one developer who has knowledge about accessibility and with a tester. And this should be a project manager should be okay with it, not even okay with it, but welcome it, because you can prevent so many bugs already when having these very well documented. Other complex navigations, I had to work with something like this. And then I was wondering, what is the with keyboard, where do you want to go first? Like within this element, do you want to have the buttons? Do you want to jump to the information where users can get more information and then they're able to scroll? This is something very important for me, the developer, to know what is the tab order. And this is not my decision as a developer. This has to be decided, maybe not even from the designer, but in this phase, thanks, Kathy. In this phase, they should already know and implement it what the correct tab order is. Maybe this is the decision from the product manager, or I guess for the product owner, or the product owner says the designer should decide, or we should decide as a team. I don't care, but I want it as a developer. I do not want to spend time on thinking how the designer thought I should implement it, but tell me how you want me to implement it. Yeah, and if you are able to write some code, then maybe even put in some examples, or with the collaboration with a developer would be nice. So yeah, a good designer, in my opinion, designs user experience, keeping all different users in mind, and understands the web structure under the hood, or is able to ask questions to the developer or testers. For the developer, yeah, currently the code's without structure, and I would say like the code, as this is their own code base, no one is reading the code as well, and like they were only ones reading the code, using divs and JavaScript functions because it's cool. Don't know most of the HTML elements, and don't know also the problems with certain HTML elements. I would, yes, Stephanie, I would give, this is everything of these images is created in Figma, and these are Figma annotations. So you have all these are widgets or extensions you can implement in Figma, and everything of this is created in Figma. So this should be added in Figma or the tool you're using. Yeah, and I already talked about my different experience with other developers. Also, I have developers who think they know better than other developers. There was one person coming new to a project, and I was trying to explain how we are using this project, and they saw something in the CSS style sheet. They saw something like dot a class and dot another class, and without a space. And they said, this is a mistake. There's no space. It can't work. And I thought, okay, it's weird for you as a newbie to say this is a mistake or a bug, and it can't work. First of all, you did not see the bug. Second of all, you're completely new, and only because you never saw that you can, how is this described? And when you implement a style on a specific element, and there are elements having different classes. If you want to be more specific to really catch this specific element, then you do write it with class and without a space and the second class of this element to make it to catch exactly this element. And they didn't know about it. They didn't know about it, and that's okay. You do not have to know about it. I think when I joined this was also my first project, maybe, and I think I also did not see this before. But my first thought was not, okay, they made a mistake. My first thought was, hey, I never seen this before. What is this? Is this something new? And then I did my research, and I saw that you can add several classes, or it's often in big project you also have to do it, add class to class to class to really catch this specific element to change their style. And yeah, I think this is a weird thing to do coming to a new project, assuming the first thing you're saying is there's a mistake because this is not correct, instead of thinking about yourself. Maybe you do not know certain things and trying to figure out first and checking it first, and then you can still say, hey, I found a mistake. Just my opinion. I think it made a weird vibe, actually, but okay. Or there are also developers. So I think it's a good thing to do, like in the code base have JavaScript classes which start with JS. What is it called? Yeah, the dash? No. Yeah, you know, the the line, I'm sorry. And a name for it, meaning that this is a class not used in CSS, but only for JavaScript functionality. I think this is very useful to understand because I saw developers thinking when cleaning up code that, oh, this element is not in use or this class is not in use because they couldn't see it in CSS or there was no style in CSS and then deleted it, not understanding the outcome that this element was, of course, used somewhere, but only for CSS, only for JavaScript. And also changing, most likely new developers do not understand how to get into a new project, to understand how the code works, starting having one side of many sides. I think we should know that we reuse components and start changing styles for this component, because on this side it does not work as expected, and do not understand that the same component is used somewhere else and now it is also destroyed on others' pages. Why, how? I don't. What did you do until now when you learned about development? Projects are big, and of course changing one thing has some outcome also on other sides. You have to check. It's for you to understand where is this element used on the whole project, on which different sides, where do you need it, maybe having it in blue and maybe in red, and then start using the correct class and the correct ID or whatever, and then change it only on this side, make this happen and understand the whole code base. And then so many bugs were appearing, and if you're only like for this project, as I said, I was the only front-end developer and then this newbie, and we did not have something like someone checks it before it gets pushed, and it was pushed, and the whole push system, like having it checked with Jenkins and the whole implementation stuff, it took 1 hour to get even to the testing stage until the tester, and most of the time also the tester did not check that it failed now on another page. Communication and understanding the whole project from the beginning would be key to avoid these mistakes from the beginning, and give everyone the time to land on a new project, make presentations. I don't know if someone is involved to the project longer than the others, do presentation about all these concerns I was now telling you, which could be helpful, that people start to understand the code base sooner, and then these mistakes do not even happen. And I'm a big fan for code reviews and such. I really don't know why this is not used, at least in the projects I was working with. I would refrain from, not refrain, but I would give the code back in a decline. I would decline so many pull requests because they are simply so bad. But when you're on the code base already, I think it's hard to remove it after some time. You will lose yourself in all the code stuff, and I think it's because you're not started the project good and safe to begin with. Like in CSS, I always write my CSS properties alphabetically to not oversee if it's a long CSS element, to not oversee if I did not already have it on it. And then you overwrite the styles or stuff like this. And I think writing it alphabetically is something so simple. And I think you can also do it with the S-line style or pretty or something, that you really prevent developers for pushing code when it's certain things are not the way you are discussed in the beginning. You should do some security stuff in the beginning. Make sure, especially when it comes to code and or how to push, how you name your branch, how you do pull requests, how you write certain classes and IDs and stuff. This should be documented and always the same to ensure at least good code quality in this sense and understanding for other developers. So a good developer would understand and develops with code with a good developer experience in mind. So delete the comments, delete unused elements. You were trying things out. Do not push things you were simply when you're just trying things out. Only push to the main branch when you are sure this works, or when it's approved by others. Understand how the DOM works or the operating systems. That is different. The element you're creating in Chrome maybe looks different when you open it in Safari. but this, you should know this. Also, operating systems, the older ones, only because you are working with the latest operating system and the latest browser does not mean that other people are using this as well. And you have to keep in mind that some semantic HTML elements or CSS or whatever maybe work now and on your machine, but maybe they were approved only 6 months ago. So many people out there will not perceive this element as you have implemented. And not even a good developer, but a basic developer should know this. Also, the relationship between screenreader and assistive technology to their operating system and to their browser. And yeah, and also understand semantic HTML. And that semantic HTML not only has pros, but also cons. And yep, for the last row, the QA tester. Yeah, the test. I can only, again, only say from my experience, I saw the test for responsiveness, the test with different, but at least but mostly modern devices, and the test with mouse, and the write bug tickets like it does not work. Okay, who is paying them? I'm not sure who. I would not pay them, but a QA tester should understand what users are out there. There's not only a mouse, there is a keyboard. So many developers telling me they're only using the keyboard. So this should be common knowledge that there are at least keyboard users who really use only the keyboard and shortcuts and stuff, and not only the mouse. So they also test for at least a keyboard. Thinking about that, there is something like a tab order. Test with different hardware. Already said it. Yeah, and with different senses. This is what I wanted to say. And the screen reader, and understands the different users, what they want to perceive and how they perceive. Understand also the different elements and how users could struggle with interactive elements. Understand that depending on how the developer has written the code. As I mentioned with the button, so a semantic HTML button, a default button you can use with functionality built in. It is operable with the enter key and the spacebar. If you're doing it with a div and you do not know about it, then most likely the developer only writing a click function, and most likely the tester also tests with mouse and they think, okay, everything works fine. And maybe they know that they can use the keyboard, but they maybe do not know that a button should be operable with 2 keys and a link should be operable with 1 key. When you enter the checkboxes, then you can navigate the checkboxes also with the tab key, the different checkboxes. But when you're entering a radio button element, then you enter the whole element with the tab key, but the different radio elements you have to navigate with the arrow keys. This is something, the designer should know, and I as a developer should know, and also the tester should know. So really know the elements and how to test them correctly, and write bug tickets more effectively, like really what is the user expecting, why, and also why it is a problem maybe. So this would go more to an accessibility audit, but it can also help for the developer better understand and maybe make less mistakes in the future when I already know what's the problem actually. Because you're telling me, okay, it does not work with keyboard, maybe my thought is, okay, who cares? Because I do not know. It would be great if you have the bug ticket writing. It does not work with keyboard, and keyboard is very important for keyboard user or for screen reader users. They only use the keyboard and not the mouse, or most of them, the visual impaired one, they use the keyboard, but people with cognitive disabilities or neurodiverse people use the screen reader with the keyboard, but of course they have sight, so they also use the mouse. There's so many different possibilities how people can use all the stuff and the web, and the tester should know this and also test for all these different possibilities. And I think that, and also it was mostly it. Also understand how critical the ticket is. So it's a bug. Okay, it's a bug, but is it very critical? Does this prevent a user from really perceive anything on the web? Then it is a critical issue. Is it something like, well, it would be great if the contrast is a little bit higher, or at least is 1 point to at least meet the success criteria? Maybe this was a bad example. Like an abbreviation, there's one term in a long paragraph. Does this keep the user for really understanding the whole purpose of the website? No, then it's not that critical. But if they have to log in to perceive any kind of information and the login is already not screenreader accessible, so they do not know even where to put some information, then this is really a critical issue. So the user cannot even get into the application. And this would be a critical issue, and this is something a tester should understand and mark it like this. Yeah, I think this is it. I talked a lot. I can talk for more examples. There's so many weird examples out there, but I think you get what I was trying to say, and I hope this helps you understand maybe team structure better, or you're thinking, okay, Julia is poor. She had really bad luck with their teams and projects, and I really hope this is the case. And on your side, everything is quite fine, and the only concern is big accessibility into it from the very beginning. I wish you best of luck. I just wanted to make sure that you also see how else it could be, how often it could be the case when you have to work with team members who do not care, or no one feels responsible, or there's simply chaos. I don't know. Yeah, so for the next webinar series, I have the session in August. It would be accessibility pitfalls and how to fix them. I will get into more detail about the problems I already described with the elements when people think this works, but it actually did not work, and how to start thinking about elements differently, and how to look for a good resource to understand it and to learn from it. Do not even make the mistakes in the first place, but at least to learn from them and make it better in the future. And what are these pitfalls? So as I mentioned, there are pros and cons for semantic HTML. This would be some pitfall because everyone, or most of the accessibility advocates out there, and there are maybe a bit too much praying and do not understand as well themselves. They're always praying use semantic HTML, but there are so many things not working. And if you're a developer, only listen to this sentence, use semantic HTML, then you think, okay, I used it, so there should be no problem at all. And this is so often not the case. Yeah, these are the examples I want to bring to you the next time. So I really hope you will join, even though it's maybe more for developers. I think it's for everyone. As I mentioned, I think every role should be more fluid, and you should at least understand it, even though you're not writing code, to maybe help other developers out. Yeah. And yeah, for the session info and material, already shared it in the links in the chat. You can check that out. Also, follow the Accessibility News newsletter from Laura to be up to date with the latest events happening online, in person, in Austrian, German, in English. Also, she also writes other great blog posts I could not find anywhere else. I think they are funny and informative, and from a different perspective on disabilities and inclusion. I really enjoy reading it, and I can recommend it very, very much. So there is time for a Q&A if you have questions. I also assume I talked a lot and it was much information you have to process, and I really talked a lot, but still time for a Q&A. Feel free to contact me also after the webinar. I'm online on LinkedIn, or you can write me an email or whatever. My resources, always the same, because these are the best resources. I will also talk about these resources in the next webinar because they are so good and why they are so good. Yeah. Otherwise, thank you for joining. It was great talking about it, and I feel much better now after I blamed these different roles and what they're doing wrong, and hope for the best that we can do better, yeah, in the future. So I would say